Here's some information if you need a little bit of extra help or practice, or maybe you miss class time and you just need some instruction with elimination. So if we're solving a system using elimination, our goal is to get everything set up in this nice, neat sort of stacked format. So our X's are on top of each other, our Y's are on top of each other, our equal signs, and then our numbers. We have two main things that we want to happen. We want one of our variables, either our X or our Y, it doesn't matter which one, it can be either, to have a matching coefficient. So we want them to have the same number sitting in front of the variable. And we also want them to have the opposite sign. Okay, if we have them having the opposite sign, then we'll be able to just use addition, which most of us prefer over subtraction. So if we take a look at number 1, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to see if we can find either the X or the Y, see if they either have a matching coefficient. So if we look at the X, right, up here we have nothing in front, right? We don't see anything, which is a 1. So this one has a 1, this one has a 3. Those do not match. But if we look here at the Y, we'll see that these have a matching coefficient, right? They both have a 2 sitting in front of it. Okay, and then we're going to check the sign. So if we sort of look right in front of it, this 2 is positive, and that 2 is negative. And that's what we want to happen. We want them to have the same number sitting right in front of it, and for that number to be an opposite sign. So 1 to be positive and 1 to be negative. Once that's the case, we can take these two equations and we can add them straight down, very similar to multi-digit addition, where we're just sort of adding one column at a time. So we'll say x plus 3x gives us 4x. 2y plus negative 2y gives us 0. That y is eliminated, which is what we want to happen. We want one of the variables to go away. And 7 plus negative 3 gives us 4. This then gives us an equation that we know how to solve. So now we can just divide by 4 on each side and have x equals 1. Now we've said that a solution to a system is the x and y value that make both equations true at the same time. And right now we do not have the x and the y, we only have the x. So we need to take this and we need to plug it back into one of the equations that we started with. It can be either of them. We need to pick one, and we need to replace x with now the value of 1. So instead of saying x plus 2y, we're now going to say 1 plus 2y equals 7. And then this is just a two-step equation that we should be able to solve. If you're not sure or you forget on how to solve a two-step equation, you might want to go back and find a video that I have in here over two-step equations. And so we'll get y equals 3. So we could either write our answer as x equals 1 and y equals 3, or we could write this as an ordered pair, x comma y, right, where the x value goes first, y value is second, and so we would have 1 comma 3. Okay. Let's jump down and let's look at number 5. Okay, so again, our first objective when we're looking at this is to find a variable that has a matching coefficient. So the x has a 2 and a 3, those do not match. The y has a 3 and a 6, those also do not match. So our next thought is then we want to try and multiply by something to see if we can make them match. So to do that, right, we would ask ourselves, is there anything I can multiply a 2 by to turn it into a 3? Can't do anything there. Is there anything we can multiply a 3 by to turn it into a 6? And we can do that, right? We could multiply by 2. Now, before we start multiplying through, remember there was two things that we wanted. We wanted it to have a matching number in front, but we also wanted them to be the opposite sign. So let's check our signs and make sure that that's going to be the case. So this y up here has a 6 in front of it, and that 6 is currently positive. So no problem there. Let's check here. This y has a 3 in front of it, and it's currently negative. So 1 is positive and 1 is negative, which means we don't need to do anything to make them opposite signs because they already are. So that top equation, I'm going to keep exactly the same. 3x plus 6y equals 6. And this bottom equation, I'm now going to multiply through with that 2. So we'll say 4x minus 6y equals 8. I'm multiplying in all three places. Okay, and now I can add these equations. So 3x plus 4x will give me a 7x. 6y plus negative 6y, those will become 0, so we don't need to write that down. 6 plus 8 will give me a 14. Okay, and just like before, this is now something that I can solve. And I'll get x equals 2. Okay, now again, we need the x and y values, so we're going to have to plug this x back in. We can plug it into either of the original equations or the one we multiplied by 2. If you plug it into the one where you multiplied, you just tend to have bigger numbers. So that's kind of up to you as to where you want to go. I think I'm going to go up here into this original equation over here. So now instead of saying 3 times x, I'm now going to say 3 times 2 plus 6y equals 6. 3 times 2 is 6. Again, now I have a two-step equation that I'm able to solve. I'll undo multiplication with division. 0 divided by 6 is 0. And so I'll get x equals 2, y equals 0, or the ordered pair 2, 0. Okay, let's take a look at one more. How about this one right? No, let's jump down here and let's look at number 9. Let's do that one together. So 5x plus 9y is 112, and 3x minus 2y equals 8. Again, if we look at this, we do not see a matching x and y at this point, right? We don't see a matching coefficient here or a matching coefficient here. So we need to, again, multiply to make them match. So we're going to ask ourselves if there's anything we can multiply 3 by to make it 5, which we cannot do. And there's nothing actually that we can multiply 2 by to make it a 9 either. So now we need to multiply both equations by turning both of them into a matching number. So you can decide if you want to get rid of the x or the y. It could be smaller numbers. You can sort of decide. So because we've looked at a couple with y's, let's go ahead and decide to get rid of the x on this one. It's also going to work out with a little bit sort of smaller pieces to multiply maybe in some places. Okay, so I'm going to look at this 5 and the 3. I can either tell myself that I know 5 and 3 can both turn into 15, or you can take the coefficient of the x on the bottom row and put that on top, and the coefficient of the x on the top row, and multiply that on the bottom. Okay, so I just sort of flip-flopped these coefficients. What I'm really saying is that 3 times 5 gives me 15, and that 5 times 3 gives me 15, so I'm turning them into the same thing. Now, again, before we multiply, we also want them to have opposite signs. So right now, if I look, this 5x is positive, and that 3x is positive. It has nothing to do with these signs. Those go to the y. So I'm looking over here. These are both positive. So if I want to have opposite signs, I need to make one of those negative as well. I'm not going to make both of them negative, but just one of them. So now I'm going to multiply through and get two new equations. So on top, 5 times 3 gives me 15x plus 27y equals 336. On the bottom equation, I'll have negative 15x. A negative and a negative give me a positive 10y. And a negative 40. Again, I'm multiplying all the way through, all three places. Okay, I might need to pull out a calculator at this point, check some math, but we're going to add straight down. So 15 and negative 15 go away. They are eliminated. 27 plus 10y gives me a 37y. If I do the 336 plus a negative 40, that will give me 296. Right, we're going to undo multiplication with division. And that will give us y equals 8. Now, just like before, we're not done yet. We still have to plug that back in. Again, you can pick any of the places. So I think I'm going to plug in here. I have a little bit of smaller numbers. So I'll say 3x minus 2 times 8 equals 8. Solve this two-step equation. And I'll get x equals 8. And so my answer would be x equals 8 and y equals 8, or the ordered pair 8, 8. So why don't you go through and try and finish the rest of these, and then once you're done, watch the follow-up video that has the rest of the answers done for you.